Hello, once again. I've been trying to produce as many of these videos as I can uh, in these early days. I'm very confident that there's going to come a time when we're going to be, we're going to have quite a few of these videos under our belt. But for these early days, I really want to. I've been doing these in the morning. Now it's in the evening, and I'd like to do another one. And I'm hoping that you're going to subscribe and that you're going to pass the word to others. I don't remember exactly where we left off in the last video, but in this video, I'd like to talk about the business of faith. What is faith? Why is faith important? What is the purpose of faith? Does faith work for us or against us? What is it? What is its advantage? What is its disadvantage? And is faith all we have? Now, I've made it clear in my other videos that I come from a heavy evangelical background. And then something happened in 2008 that profoundly changed my entire understanding of everything. When I was in the evangelical movement, I would just take faith at face value. You never question faith when you're within the Christian church. Why would you want to question faith? Why would there ever be a reason to question faith? Now, there is quite a bit written on this subject of faith. I suppose I could go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, and read that off, just like evangelical preachers tell you that faith moves mountains? I could tell you about faith from the perspective of the faith movement, the faith teachers, and give you the idea that our relationship with God is analogous to the faith that we have. When we look at the way that the New Testament, specifically the Gospels, handles this business of faith, it brings up some pretty big questions. Jesus said, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you will be able to move mountains. For those of you who do not know, a mustard seed isn't very big. In fact, it's tiny. What's interesting about the mustard seed is, while it's true that it is tiny, the plant that it produces is huge. Why is it then that when we look at what's going on in the world today in the 21st century, that faith is either extremely weak or non-existent? Let's talk about faith today. What is faith? There are plenty of occurrences of the word faith within the New Testament. The word for faith in the original language is pistis, pistis, and variations thereof. And you will also find that the word believe, which is the verb form of the word faith, is also the same word in the Greek. In English, we would never be able to know that. If we're talking about the noun, we say faith. If we're talking about the verb, we say believe or belief. Belief, of course, would be the same thing as faith. That is the noun, and believe is the verb. It is the same. It is the same word. It is the same meaning. Don't complicate it. But why is it that the New Testament says so much about faith? Is faith the key? Is faith the way to truth? The answer to that question is yes and no. The reason that faith exists, the reason that faith was brought to the table in the New Testament in the first place, was because while it's true that the Jews were very devout, the truth is, if you were to compare the devotion of the Jews to the experience of, say, the Buddhists, which are about 400 or 500 years older, you would see a profound difference. If you were to compare the faith of these Jews to Hinduism, yes, Hinduism existed at that time. This is hard for us to understand. Hinduism existed at that time. Buddhism existed at that time. I find it fascinating that in all the things that Jesus talked about when he was in Judea, he never, ever addressed, never said anything at all about the religions of the East. Now, maybe he did, and maybe it's just not written. I've actually got quite a bit to say on that subject, but if I start going into the Aquarian Gospel and so on and so forth, we would get way off of our subject for today. Perhaps we'll talk about it another time. But let me say this. When you look at the experience of the ancient Hindus and the ancient Buddhists, and then these ancient Jews, and there's much more than that. I there's really quite a bit, and but I just want to try to keep this simple. We'll just keep it to those three for now. The Buddhists and the Hindus, even to this very day, will tell you about a faith, and they will tell you about a knowledge. Many believers are not aware of this, but Jesus did the same thing. He talked about a faith. We can see this in John 3:16. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him, that's a faith. And then he talked about a knowing. In the section where he's talking about when we all get to that final state, he talks about how we'll either be welcomed or we won't be welcomed. If we're welcomed, according to the text, the words will be said, "Well done, good and faithful servant." There's quite a bit to say about that, but I want to try to stay focused on my point here. And if we don't have the approval and we get to that same place, he says, "I never knew you. I never knew you." Most people just let that go right over their head. I am hoping to blow your mind. This word that he's using, "I never knew you," is the Greek word ginosko. 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 And this word is describing an extremely intimate relationship. It's not talking about cerebral knowledge. It's not talking about book knowledge. It's talking about an intimate knowledge and understanding of you, the person, on an intimate level. This word, ginosko, crosses over into the Hebrew word yada or yada, Y-A-D-A. We find this word yada, for example, in Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, where it says, "And Adam knew his wife." This is a reference to sexual intimacy. It is not saying that he knew his wife in a way that, knew her ways and, what she likes and what she doesn't like and so on and so forth. That's part of it. This word is a very deep, intimate term. We find the same crossover. We were talking about the word gnosko. This is the Greek word in the New Testament. It's all over the place. And there's a reference in Luke chapter 1, verse 34. I could ramble off a whole bunch of them, but we're just to kind of give you the idea of what we're talking about here. In Luke 1:34, we see Mary having her encounter with the angel. And the angel is telling her, a virgin, that she's going to have a child. And she says to the angel, basically, how is this possible in that I haven't known a man? That I haven't known a man. Here again, we have the same word, ginosko. Now you say, okay, fair enough. Why is this important? This is a reminder. You have 5 minutes remaining. Why is this important? This is a reminder. You have 5 minutes remaining. It's important because it's telling us something about this transition between the highest form of faith. Let me rephrase that. It's pointing out the relationship, the kinship, if you will, between faith and knowing. This is where most people are missing the boat. The way that we're brought up in the church today, they talk about faith. They talk about belief, believing. That's all they talk about. If you know something otherwise, please do let me know. You know, it's interesting. I remember, I think I mentioned somewhere along the line that I used to do music ministry when I was an evangelical. And I remember there was a song that I used to sing. I don't remember exactly how it went, but it was something like, I want to know you more. Something like that. I want to know you more. Clearly, someone, whoever it was that wrote that song, and there's plenty of other songs that are very similar to it, where today's contemporary writers don't just want to have a faith, belief, experience with the Lord. They want to have a deep knowing relationship with the Lord. How about you? How do we make that transition from faith, pistis, to knowing, ginosko, yada? And when we make that transition, number one, is it noticeable? Is it noticeable to the one that it happens to? Is it noticeable to the people that that person interacts with? Does it make a dramatic difference in the way that this person does things in life? This is very peculiar because, again, I'm going back to that passage where Jesus talks about the faith of a mustard seed. And he says you can move mountains. I can't say that I totally get that yet, but I will say this, that whatever this thing is that he's calling the faith of a mustard seed, obviously is very, very, very close. It's something that is very, very simple to obtain. Why is it then that while we believe in such things, we don't see monumental things going on? I'm sure that there are evangelicals out there that would have a very creative reply to that. Let me take you to the point. Let me get to my main point here. Faith, for the most part, is a placebo. I bet people are leaving now. Faith is a placebo. What is a placebo? Some of us have heard of a placebo effect. A placebo effect is when we believe in something so strongly. Let me rephrase this. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I have a stomach ache, and the doctor, or it doesn't have to be a doctor, it could be anybody, and they give you a little pill and they say, "This is for your stomach. Take this." You don't have any reason to doubt them. So you take the pill and you ingest it, and then an hour later, you feel wonderful. You say, "Okay, and?" The pill is a fake. It's got water in it, maybe milk, I don't know, but there's no medicine. The reason that you got well is because of the effect that the placebo had on you. This has been proven and proven over and again by scientific experiments. So when I say that faith is a placebo, that's what I'm talking about. We are told to have faith. And I'm saying to you, faith is a placebo. You say, "Well, wait a minute. If faith is a placebo, in the same way that that little pill is a placebo, it's pretending to be the real deal." Wait a minute. What's the real deal then? If we're talking about medicine, maybe the real deal is a real laxative or real penicillin or real whatever. digoxin, whatever. Okay, why then, Brother John, do you call faith a placebo? What exactly is it that faith is taking the place of, that we are so strongly believing in this faith in such a way that we think it is going to move mountains? What is the real McCoy? What? You tell me. The answer is ginosko, knowing. Ginosko, knowing. What are you saying, John? What are you saying? What I'm saying is, I hate to put it to you, but for the most part, the modern day church has got everything all screwed up. When you look at the early church, yes, there was quite a bit of talk about the pistis faith. That's true. But there was also quite a bit of talk about the ginosko, the knowledge, the intimate relationship with the Father. How come we never heard? Oh, how come we never hear about that in church today? Because in the third century, it was pushed under the rug. What are you saying, Brother John? Are you saying that this knowledge, this intimate knowledge of God is still available today, and this has been hidden from us for all these years? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I am out of time, and I want to come back, and I want to talk more about this subject of faith and knowing. But let me leave with something that might interest you. In 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about being face to face with God. He talks about knowing God like we are fully known. He calls this the perfect. The word perfect is the Greek word teleo. It means completion, accomplished, a done deal. This perfect is what we aspire. It's the thing that we are in this for. It's the end all. It's the objective. He says, when the perfect has come, then you will see face to face, and you will know as you are fully known. You're way ahead of me. Yes, That word know and known is the word ginosko. Why don't they teach this in the church? You think? I have quite a bit more to say about this, but it's time to go. I mentioned to you quite a few times now that in 2008 I resigned from the evangelical church, and for the last 16 years I've been studying ginosko. And through this ginosko, this knowledge, I've already mentioned, and I'll say it again, I've had experience after experience after experience where I not only have this experience of intimacy with the Father, but there's a communion where the Father shows me very deep intuitions. This is part of the knowledge, the gnosko. There's quite a bit more to say, but I am out of time. And maybe when we come back again, we can talk a little bit more about this whole business of faith versus knowledge. I think, in fairness, we probably need to talk about the Gnostics. There's a great misunderstanding in the church today about what who the Gnostics were, what were they all about, what did they teach, should we be should we shun any kind of Gnostic teaching? Perhaps we'll talk about that in our next segment. No, I am not a Gnostic. I don't wear labels, as I've said before. I study material with Gnostics. I study Egyptian material. I study Jewish material, Christian material, Buddhist material, Taoist material. It all links together. Christians who are hearing me say this are scoffing. Ha! 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 It all fits together. Ha! I used to say the same thing. How would you ever know unless you read the volumes yourself? You can't possibly know. You scoff because of hearsay. You scoff because of something that somebody else told you. Have you read the material? Don't feel too bad. I used to scoff too. And then I read the material. And it blew my mind and changed me on the inside, on the outside. Radical change. I challenge you today to not be so quick with what we say, with what we think, with how we condemn something that we don't understand. We are so quick to demonize Hindus, Taoists, Sikhs, Buddhists, list goes on, pagans, so quick. And we have no idea that all these things that we demonize are all pieces to the grand design. Thank you for listening today, and thank you for joining me. I hope you join next time, and don't forget to subscribe. Peace, shalom, salam, namaste, satriyakal, and unity to you. I'm Brother John, and we'll talk again soon.